Yes, sir.
Okay. And you actually had resigned as of June 2nd, correct?
Correct.
So at the time of June 2nd, then, you were no longer employed by the Punta Gorda Police Department, right?
Yes, sir.
There was no longer an issue of whether Tom Lewis was going to be your chief or supervisor because you had already chosen to leave, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it was after that, then, that you learned that Tom Lewis was coming up for a meeting with me, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, I had not called you about scheduling that meeting with Tom Lewis. You and I had not exchanged calendars or anything.
That's correct.
And in the process of that, again, it was said to you in a discussion about that I still wanted to talk to you, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you thought about that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because prior to ever talking to me, as you indicated before, and I'm not going to ask you about any content of that, but you had your own attorney, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you then did whatever steps you did to make that decision, and then agreed to come and talk to me, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so I never met you before that, right?
No, sir.
Okay. We didn't have any cases together or anything like that.
No, sir.
And when you came up there, I took you in a room by yourself, correct?
Correct.
Right? And you recall when I told you you're up there, I don't care what relationships you have with anybody else. I don't need you to try and help anybody, hurt anybody. I just need you to tell me the truth as to what you remember happening, and I need to ask you questions about your statement, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did I tell you at any point, well, first of all, did I have any ability to compel you to come there?
No, sir.
Did I force you to come there?
No, sir.
Did you ever say, I really don't want to talk to you, Mr. Romine, but somebody else told you, you better get there and cooperate with the defense?
No, sir.
Now, when I spoke to you in there, I went over your statement with you, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I had questions about certain things you said about, I wanted you to explain further what that meant, correct?
Correct.
And in complete candor, while you were there talking to me, in complete candor, everybody knows, I did offer you water and donuts,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Okay. Did you feel compelled by that, being former law enforcement, that I'm offering donuts and water or anything like that, that I'm affecting you?
No, sir.
Okay. I don't think you took them, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. So, did that make you feel in any way that I was trying to tell you what to say or engage your testimony or anything like that?
Absolutely not.
Okay. And the deposition that you took, I guess you had a deposition set the next day?
Yes, sir.
That wasn't my deposition I subpoenaed you for, correct?
No, sir.
What case was that in?
Officer Lee Cole.
Okay, and so I didn't attend that deposition, correct?
No, sir.
Now, let's then go to your involvement in this case that you just testified about. As a captain at the Punta Gorda Police Department, you would agree with me in that position that you basically oversaw the everyday functions about just about everybody sworn to in that agency, correct?
Yes. Yes, sir.
And you previously were in charge of the training division, correct?
Yes, I was.
Tell the jury what years you were in charge of the training division.
2011 to 2015, approximately.
All right? And as part of that, you were also previously in charge of the armory, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, you don't make any secret about it there. You are friends with most of the people in that department, correct?
Correct.
The nature of your job as a law enforcement officer is not only do you work with these people like we work with people every day, but you're actually, when you're out doing your job, trusting these people with your lives, correct?
Correct.
So would you agree with me, there's a knowledge there, a friendship there, but there's actually a level of trust between each other there.
Yes, sir.
By the nature of the job, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Lieutenant Katie had coordinated the Shoot Don't Shoot event on August 9th, correct?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay. That her job was the Lieutenant of Community Services, correct?
Correct.
And Lieutenant of Community Services is the person that is, just like you're overseeing the everyday functions about everybody in the agency from a command perspective, she's overseeing everything to do with relating to community, correct?
Yes, sir.
So that means setting up, whether she's setting up demonstrations, scenarios, charity things. That's her world to deal with as community services director, correct?
Correct.
And that's a philosophy that was brought in by the previous chief, Chief Arnell, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so that didn't exist beforehand, did it?
Not to the extent that we were doing it, no, sir.
Okay. And then basically the philosophy brought in was we're going to reach out more to the community and involve the community more with us and more with them.
Yes, sir.
So a complete position is made for somebody to be that, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, Lieutenant Heck also had other duties along that, along with her community services. She also was over, for example, the canine division, correct?
Yes, sir.
And Lee Cole was a canine officer, right?
Yes, sir.
And so up until about a month before this incident, Lieutenant Heck was Lee Cole's supervisor, correct?
That is correct.
And then you took over as a supervisor about 30 days before this event, correct?
Approximately, yes, sir.
Now, when Chief Arnell was around and made this community services lieutenant position there, you're not aware of any particular policies he put in place for community service events, like demonstrations or scenarios or anything like that?
No, sir, I'm not aware of any.
You are aware the Punta Gorda Police Department has a whole collection of policies that govern the conduct of officers, no matter what you're doing, as far as if you're working on this job.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when Chief Lewis became the chief, the policies that were in place governing all the officers when he became chief, that did not include specific ones as to a parade or a scenario or a demonstration or going to a middle school. The lack of specific policies to those events, all right, when Chief Lewis took over, also still didn't exist, correct?
Correct.
But the general policy covered all of them, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, you testified before the jury that shoot-don't shoot have been done a number of times in the past. You weren't sure the numbers, correct?
Correct.
And each of the times they've been done in the past, whether it was under Chief Arnell or Chief Lewis, they were done without any type of incident. They went off fine.
Correct.
And they were always doing the same two scenarios, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. I want to clear up some of your testimony earlier. You agree with me that Tom Lewis was not the chief of the police when the shoot-don't-shoot was implemented by the agency, correct?
Yes, sir, I do.
That was Chief Arnell that brought that in, right?
Yes, sir.
You don't know when Chief Arnell first learned about it, correct?
No, sir.
You weren't present when he first raised it or brought it up,
No,
right?
sir.
Okay. And at the time he did it, Tom Lewis was a captain, much like you were when you left, correct?
Yes, sir.
Ultimate authority then, as far as the decision to bring something in at that time, rested with who?
Chief of Police.
Okay. And that was Chief Arnell.
Yes, sir.
Under Chief Arnell, at the time when this was implemented, there was a person that was in charge of the community services, another lieutenant, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, was that Katie Hack?
No, sir.
Who was that?
Lieutenant Joe King.
Okay. So, anything that, again, comes in that the chief wants done, Chief Arnell, back then, the lieutenant in charge of community services would be the person responsible, that's their job, to go implement it, correct?
Yes, sir.
When you testified before and the state read you this line, and who in this agency, well, here was the question you were asked, and who in this agency is the one that gleaned or distilled that information from you to then put it into play here? What did you understand that question to be asking you?
How I became aware of it. Who gave that, who told me that we were going to implement it at the agency, or that's what we were looking to implement at the agency.
Okay, so if there's any suggestion that you were trying to say there that Chief Lewis somehow either had the authority or brought it in or grabbed it off of YouTube or whatever, anything else that goes there, you were not saying that?
I was not saying that.
All right, and then your answer actually was, I believe it was the chief, correct?
Yes.
And you meant that in the sense of, I believe it's the chief that I first heard, hey, we're going to be doing something like this.
Yes, all I can say is where I first heard it from. I wasn't part of the implementation or the discussion or surrounding it or anything like that.
Now, when the state asked you about that, that statement was done August 15th of 2016 at about 2:47 in the afternoon, correct? When you spoke with FDLE agents, Gary Negrinelli, Special Agent Supervisor Patrick Crone.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was there another statement that you were at with the state where you were giving sworn testimony in this case?
The deposition of Lee Coles?
Right, on June 7th, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so at that deposition, do you remember which prosecutors were present to hear what you said?
The two state attorneys that are present today.
Okay. And at that deposition then, you were again asked about the same question, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you gave sworn testimony about it then, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in that deposition, you were asked, I'm getting there. 27, starting at 13, not 13. You were asked at that deposition, question, and by the way, the person questioning you was the attorney for Lee Cole, correct?
Yes, I have not had a chance to read this deposition.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you
Okay.
if you remember, I'm going to ask you to remember that's correct, and if you need to see it to refresh your recollection, let me know.
Okay.
Okay? Question was asked you, and as best as you can tell, somebody saw something on YouTube and adapted it for Punta Gorda. Answer, that I don't know. I can tell you how it was relayed to me as far as how it was coming into the agency. I wasn't involved in the upper workings of how the scenario was developed. Is that accurate of your testimony?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you said that on June 7th, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, you also were asked, page 27, line 25, and page 28, line 6. You also were asked question. So there was no protocol out there that instructed the police department in terms of what they should do in terms of putting on the shoot, no shoot scenario in the safest manner possible to protect the public and the police. Answer, your answer. You're asking me questions that I don't know. Question. The answer is you don't know. Your answer. I don't know. That was your testimony?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And FDLE interviewed you how many times?
Twice, sir.
The first interview that they did of you was on August 10th at 1 in the morning, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, let's set this up. You've been there for the shoot, don't shoot, correct?
Yes, sir.
You've now seen what has happened, right?
Yes, sir.
And you stayed around the whole time because FDLE was now interviewing people, and you're still there.
That's correct.
That's why this is happening at 1 in the morning.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And FDLE, page 11. FDLE in the August 10th interview, the first one.
Yes, sir.
Which 9th into the 10th, asked you, okay, who developed this particular scenario? Your answer, I have no idea. I can't even, I'm sure when they did the very first one, and I'm going back, if I had to guess, over a year, and they say, okay, and you say, I'm guessing they sat down and came up with it. I can't give you an answer to that. That was your testimony, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, that statement about who implemented and everything that I just read to you is your first interview, correct?
Yes, sir.
The one the state used when they were crossing you was your second interview, correct?
Yes.
And
yes, the
in
third.
your first interview and in your subsequent deposition, you've made very clear that you were relaying basically who you might have heard that the agency was doing it from, not who's putting it together and structuring it and all of those things.
That would be correct.
So any suggestion that you somehow in that second thing were saying that Tom Lewis did this whole thing and brought it and pulled it off YouTube, that would be an improper suggestion, correct?
That's correct.
Page 28. Again, you were asked, or did you tell him? Let me strike that. You don't know how the whole process evolved, correct?
No, sir.
And you let that be known in your deposition on June 7th also, correct?
Yes.
You don't know what went into it as far as planning when it first came in under Chief Carnell, correct?
Correct.
And you let that be known at your deposition on June 7th, 2017, correct?
I believe so. Again, I haven't read the deposition.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
This refreshes your recollection. Can you just read from 23 down? The end of that. And don't, and just read it and refresh your recollection.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Does that refresh your recollection as to whether you advised him in the deposition that you did not know what went into?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's go to August 9th. You showed up to work that morning dressed in your Class A uniform, right?
Yes, sir.
And as you described to the jury, it's kind of a special uniform you wear, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, nobody called you up to say, hey, Captain Woodard, you need to come in your Class A's today.
No, sir.
You are fully capable of dressing yourself in the morning and choosing your clothes and going to work, correct?
Yes, sir.
And normally, if you were coming to work and you were going to not be in a Class A uniform, what would you wear?
It's called a Class B uniform, which is short sleeve.
Okay. And so the Class A's, you said, are for special events, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you yourself made the choice that morning without anybody asking you, I'm going to wear my Class A,
Yes,
right?
sir.
And that's because you yourself made the choice, you know what? This thing is tonight, and I want to be part of it.
Yes, sir.
Chief Lewis didn't call you up and say, hey, I'm going to assign you something or anything like that, correct?
No, sir.
When you showed up in your Class A's, Chief Lewis and others questioned, why are you decked out in the dress stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So they didn't know, right?
Correct.
And so you let them know, basically, because I want to be part of the Citizens Academy tonight, and I'm going to stay to help, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you offered, what is it y'all want me to do, right?
Yes, sir.
And upon offering that, because you were offering to be there, the chief said, well, great, you can help out, you can move things along, make sure it runs smoothly, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the chief was giving his presentation, and you were going to do things like say, hey, you know, we're getting your 5 minutes, things like that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Lieutenant Salzman was also, he was actually scheduled to be there, right?
Yes, sir.
And when you ended as the training officer, who took over as the training officer?
Lieutenant Chris Salzman.
Okay. And you'd agree with the training officer does the in-service trainings, correct?
Yes, sir.
Does the stuff with the armory, right?
Yes, sir.
Is trained to do safety checks and things of that nature, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And somewhere when the chief was doing his part of the event, let me ask you, do you recall saying at any point to Chief Lewis or making a statement to him about doing something with the simunitions or going to the armory?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that was basically your offer to go, you want me to go secure the simunitions and take care of this?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you said that, Lieutenant Chris Salzman was nearby you, correct?
I don't know that, sir.
Okay. Do you know if he was in the room?
I don't know that.
Okay. Do you recall telling Chris Salzman at some point before you went to do it? You recall?
Hearsay?
Sustained.
It was the stick one.
Sustained.
motion.
You may.
Whenever it was that you made the statement to Chief Lewis, was it, you don't know who was around, is that correct?
I have no idea.
Lieutenant Sullivan could have been around you and heard all of this, correct?
Could have been.
Okay. You weren't paying attention to what personnel was standing there.
No, sir.
Clear to say then that when you're conveying that to Chief Lewis, you are conveying going to do something which is consistent with a safety check.
Yes, sir.
Consistent with that, did you at some point determine that you wanted for the shoot don't shoot to get a holster?
Yes, sir. I think so, yes.
You recall going into the room and seeking a holster from, I believe, Detective DeVault?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And so Detective DeVault then got up with you and went and helped look for a holster, correct?
Yes, sir.
And eventually Detective DeVault gave you a holster that would fit the frame of the simunition gun, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were doing that in preparation of the simunition shoot-don't-shoot event, correct?
Yes, sir.
While you're doing this, Chief Lewis is still giving presentations or tours.
Tours, I believe, sir.
Okay, so he's still doing things with the group while you're preparing the shoot-don't-shoot that you've undertaken, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, in the armory, you go secure the simunition weapon, correct?
Yes, sir.
And Detective DeVault is with you in there during the check of the weapon, correct?
Correct.
And so you grab the simunition's 9mm Glock, and the first thing you do is clear it out, correct?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury what clearing it out means.
It's pulling back the slide on the weapon to make sure that there's nothing chambered in it and it's completely empty. Then you would take it and verify through looking through the barrel and the magazine compartment that there's nothing in there.
And the reason that you're looking to make sure there's nothing in it is for a safety check, correct?
Yes, sir.
Same thing with looking through it also visually, correct?
That's correct.
Once you do that, you then set the gun on the table, correct?
Yes, sir.
The next step in this is you're now going to take the simunition ammunition out, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And the empty magazine that it will go into, right?
Yes, sir.
Again, the reason you have these separate is for you making sure it's put together safely, correct?
Yes, sir.
You then went through the simunition with Detective DeVault, right?
Yes.
Now, what is the purpose of having Detective DeVault and asking for his help in doing this?
Second set of eyes just to verify that we're on the same page.
Okay. Once again, another safety step, correct?
Correct.
So, I understand. He would take a bullet first and look at it and then hand it to you?
I looked at the ammunition first,
Okay.
then I handed it to him, and I said, verify that we're using simunitions rounds, and then I asked him to hand them to me a couple at a time, and then I placed them in there.
And You indicated before you thought you may have done this about 18 times. Does that hold 18 bullets?
I'm really unsure. I don't know. Maybe? I don't know. 14, 16, I don't know.
Okay. Definitely more than 10 bullets you guys did this way.
I would say yes.
Okay. And once you do that, you do something called locking the slide back of the Sims gun, right?
It was still locked back.
Okay. Well, what does that mean? You lock the
When
slide
when I cleared it initially, when I was checking to make sure that there was nothing chambered in it, you can pull back the slide and it maintains a locked position, so nothing can be, it maintains it, so you can still tell that it's always, nothing has been entered into it. It's not closed, it's in an open position.
That's another thing done for the safety of the weapon, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And then with it, the lock, did you take it then with a locked position and go to leave to bring it out?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. And before you do that, you knew there was this issue with the tasers. There was a different scenario they never got to, dealt with shooting a taser against the board or something, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And those take a particular type of taser cartridge that the Punta Gorda police kept, correct?
Yes, sir.
You wouldn't use taser cartridges that are going to be given to the officers like a new one.
No, sir.
The taser cartridges actually have kind of an expiration date that they still work, but to be safe, we just get new ones, right?
Yes, sir.
So the ones that still work, but really aren't the ones we're going to put on the road, you'd use for a demonstration.
Yes, sir.
And those are ones that you knew to locate where they were, right?
Yes, sir.
And so you obtained those particular ones as opposed to any other taser cartridge, correct?
Correct.
Now, that dealt with then I guess the demonstration that comes after the shoot, don't shoot, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you're obtaining what's needed for that secondary event, so to speak.
Yes, sir.
Lee Cole was the only canine officer in your agency, right?
Yes, sir.
And you knew that he was the one trained to use blanks, and blanks are provided for him, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you also knew that he had regular canine training with the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office canine personnel twice a month, each month?
I think it was once a week.
Okay.
I could be wrong on that. I think it was once a week.
He was very involved, though, in training with their group, right?
Yes, sir.
And they had a very large canine group and certified trainers, correct?
Correct.
You also knew that he did a lot of demonstrations for the community, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, before the shoot, don't shoot scenario, you went out to the area where the shoot, don't shoot scenario would be.
Yes, sir.
And you actually met up with Lee Cole, correct?
I did.
And you met up with him in the parking lot then before the scenario.
Yes, sir.
You knew he was going to be playing the person that may be getting shot with a semi-munitions gun when you started talking with him, correct?
Yes, sir.
And during that discussion, it was made known to you that he didn't have a mask or was part of the shoot, don't shoot, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you learned he didn't have a mask, were you going to make sure that he was going to have a mask?
Absolutely.
Did he say anything to you that indicated that he was going to do this without a mask?
He stated, that it was okay. He didn't need one. He would just pull his hoodie over his head and zip up his sweater.
And try and make it like tight around the neck?
Something like that. Yes, sir.
Okay. And how did that go over with you?
I said no way.
And so at that point there, did you tell him, were you over him in authority?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you told him you're not doing it with just tightening up your hood and your sweater.
That's correct.
And so you told him you're going to have a mask, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you undertook the responsibility of going to find him that mask.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, part of that was you're going to get it because you realized that if he did it the way he wanted, he was putting himself at risk of being injured, correct?
Absolutely.
So you then went and looked for the mask, and one of the places you looked was in Lieutenant Salzman's office, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the reason you looked in Lieutenant Salzman's office is he was the training officer that was originally assigned to be on the shoot, don't shoot scenario.
Yes, sir.
And you knew Lieutenant Salzman as the training officer if there had to be preparations of Sims guns or equipment or anything to do with safety, that would fall to him.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you go in there thinking, well, maybe Lieutenant Sullivan has already left this in his office and we don't have it yet, right?
Correct.
Now, tell the jury, in the Punta Gorda Police Department, are there two locations where you can find things stored as far as the safety equipment?
There are times when the munitions headgear is stored in the armory. It can be stored in in a storage closet off of a roll call room that we have there. And there's also an off-site location where we store a lot of that gear.
Okay. So did you first canvass the ones that were right there that you could get to, Sullivan's office, the armory?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you find a bit?
I did not.
So you then did what?
I then got into my police vehicle, went over to the warehouse and secured, I believe, 2 masks.
And the reason you were securing 2 masks is who was the other mask for?
Officer Chodakowski, who was playing the other person in the second scenario.
Okay. The first scenario is only one person, and that's the one with the blanks, and whether the person shoots or not when the blanks go off.
Yes, sir.
The second one is 2 people look like they're pushing and fighting, and then somebody approaches the citizen kind of in a menacing manner, and they're going to see if they shoot an unarmed person.
Yes, sir.
And the reason the other officer has one is because the direction of which the person approaching the citizen is coming, the second officer is usually somewhere behind them.
Correct.
So they could be hit also with a pellet if they missed the person coming and shot over or past them.
Yes, sir.
All right. So would you agree that getting the masks for Lee Cole was doing a safety check for him?
Yes, sir.
And getting the mask for Officer Chodakowski is doing the safety checks for him?
Yes, sir.
When you return, now that you've gotten him the safety masks and you're there, you have further conversation with Lee Cole, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that conversation you have with Lee Cole, he now is getting into his the gray hoodie thing that he wore, correct?
Yes, sir. I don't remember what he was.
So if it's let me ask you this: if it's reflected on the video and evidence that you're with him with the gray part of the thing on, that's when you've come back and already given him everything.
Yes.
Okay. And so when you came back, you're with him, and he at one point shows you the gun he's going to use, correct?
I saw a portion of it, yes, sir.
Right. He lifts his shirt up.
Yes.
And when he lifts his shirt up, you make eye contact with the gun in the waistband, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the gun in the waistband you recognize is silver, correct?
Correct.
Which is what alerted you to believe it was a blanks gun, correct?
Correct.
All right. And in the time that you're looking at that, and he pulls that back down, you know it's not a Glock, right?
Correct.
If you had seen him pull his shirt up with a department-issued Glock, what would have been your response?
I would have questioned what he was doing.
Okay, because you knew it shouldn't have a gun that can fire live rounds.
Correct.
Now, you were his supervisor for a month at that point, correct?
Yes, sir.
And as part of his supervisor, you would have conversations with him, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the reason that your state of mind in looking at his shirt when he pulled it up and knowing that that's the silver gun used for blanks is he's discussed this gun with you before.
Yes.
Okay. And he had advised you before that this was the gun that just shot blanks, as you described earlier.
I've only ever heard it described as a blanks gun, yes.
Sustained.
Your knowledge in looking at the gun when you're there is you believe it is a blanks gun.
Correct.
Okay. Now, when you're there and you notice that he's pulled in the waistband, as the state pointed out before, you know that that's a violation of policy, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did you go tell Chief Lewis about that?
No, sir, I didn't.
Okay. Did you go tell Chief Lewis about the fact that Lee Cole was willing to go through a scenario without the mask?
No, sir, I did not.
In retrospect, you should have told him both those things, correct?
The holster and the masks.
Well, anything that you saw wrong.
Well, the mask thing, I think I would have just handled on my own.
Yes, sir. Okay.
As far as the not having a holster in,
Not the holster. I'm talking about the gun in the waistband.
I'm sorry, that's what I'm talking about, the gun in the waistband because it didn't have a holster.
Right. It's not supposed to be
Right.
shoved in.
And I didn't see how it was placed in the, I know that he had it in his waistband, but even then, I believe that policy pertains to live weapons, and I did not think that that was a live weapon.
Okay, so, and that's my point. So you didn't have any reason in your own mind, okay, to think that he's carrying something with live rounds?
That's correct.
Now, nothing prevented you in that moment, would you agree with me, in saying, hey, listen, just let me just look. Let me just see this just to make sure it's what I think it is. Right?
No, sir, nothing did.
Okay. And in all the other safety checks you were doing, you would agree with me that with all the safety checks you're doing and people are seeing there, that your conduct was consistent with somebody who appears to be doing the safety checks, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you're doing these checks and getting things, other officers are out going about setting up static displays, and other people can see you interacting with Lee Cole, correct?
I would imagine so.
Okay. You then, at some point, right before the scenario here, you basically advised Cole and Officer Chalikowski that we're going to be ready to go in a couple of minutes, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, you saw the rain was coming in, and so you were kind of getting concerned about maybe we should start this when we can to beat the storms.
Yes, sir.
No one had to designate you, like give you a name tag that says designated safety officer, or point at you and say designated safety officer for you to conduct safety checks, correct?
No, sir.
You know to inherently do that as part of training and the job to make sure, in fact, all the officers know to do that, correct?
That's correct.
When you're dealing with the public in a scene and all the officers there, all the officers are functioning as a safety officer, correct?
Yes, sir.
You would agree with me that it was, well, you would agree with me that includes Officer Cole, correct?
Absolutely.
He has a safety responsibility that starts with himself, correct?
Correct.
Now, if he was aware that he was carrying a gun that was not, for example, just Blank's gun, and it was capable of firing, live ammunition, or was a gun different than what you understood it to be, he had a duty to tell you that, correct?
Or any of the other 12, 15 officers that are on scene.
Right. And if he knew, if the standard thing is, hey, we all check to make sure nothing's wrong in here, that it hadn't been done for him, he had a duty to tell somebody that as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so when he was with you, you had no reason, well, let me strike this. Did you have any indication from him at any point that he wanted you to do a safety check?
No, sir.
The revolver he had was a .38, of which the agency had bought 38 blank rounds for him, correct?
I would believe so. I was never involved in the blanks ordering or issuing to him.
Let me take it back. It was a .38 revolver.
Yes.
Okay. Does the Punta Gorda Police Department carry .38 revolver live ammunition with the projectile head?
No, sir.
You were aware, and isn't it true, that the Punta Gorda Police Department policy rules on ammo is either the department is either going to issue it to you or you're going to get it approved, correct?
Correct.
So in the course of considering an officer complying with the policy of the department in using ammo there would be no concern or no expectation that an officer would have .38 live ammo because you don't carry it to issue or approve.
Correct.
Now, let's take this a step further. If you had been opening up a .38 revolver to do a safety check for live ammunition, you would have been looking for a .38 live round, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And a .38 live round, you would have known, has a projectile head on it, correct?
Yes, sir.
So when you would be opening it to look to see if it's a blank, which is flat, versus a projectile head, that's the safety check you'd be making sure that that gun did not have a live round in it, right?
Correct.
In this case, because of the nature of ammunition that Lee Cole loaded into that gun, he prevented you, even if you had done a safety check on his gun and looked in, from recognizing that he had a live round in there, correct?
Even if I had checked it,
Even if you checked it.
I would not have caught the type of ammunition that he loaded into that weapon.
And that's because the ammunition he loaded into it looked just like a blank. It didn't have a projectile head on it, correct?
Yes, it was a type of ammunition I've never heard of.
You've never heard of the term wad cutter before,
Never.
right? Never been trained on it before in all your training in years.
No, sir.
And how long you been practicing? How long were you officer?
15 and a half years.
You had the opportunity to actually see the two next to each other, correct?
Yes, sir.
Would you agree with me that they look the same except for the color?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the safety check design, had you looked, was to distinguish between a projectile bullet and a blank, not to distinguish between a blank and a wad cutter. Agreed?
Had I performed that safety check, yes.
No way you could have told.
There's no way that I would have told. No way.
Now, the state brought up something about if you ever checked role players before. In the instances, if role players were both, a role player was using a simunitions gun for a blank, and a citizen was using the simunitions gun for the pellet, okay? You agree with me that there's a way to modify the simunition gun to just fire a blank?
That is correct.
Okay, and that involves extra steps, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, that means you have to actually take the simunition round and go remove the projectile.
The detergent round, yes, sir.
Right, and then you put the same type of casing that you have for a blank, which is basically gunpowder with no projectile, in the simunitions gun.
Yes, sir.
All right, and so if an instance at any time would have involved a role player using a simunitions gun in any level, you would have done those safety checks if you were checking a civilian's gun.
If I was in charge of a weapon,
Right.
I would have checked it.
Okay. Because the difference here is Lee Cole, because he's a canine officer, had kept a gun for his canine training with him, correct?
Correct.
The simunitions guns are kept in the armory, right?
Yes, sir.
And in the previous demonstrations you've done, it is a regular practice that the officers are checking each other, correct?
That's correct.
In fact, that night, you had a belief that Chodakowski and Lee Cole, you'd seen them out there before together. You knew they were out there at that static event or the shoot-don't-shoot setting it up, correct?
Yes, sir.
You actually had a belief that they would have already done that between each other as far as checking guns.
Yes, sir, I did.
The fact that you believed that did not prevent you, though, from still doing a safety check on your own, or at least confirming that with them. Would you agree with that now?
Correct.
Prosecution asked you about the control of the shoot-don't-shoot. Now, you would agree with me that you were the handler, for lack of a better word, for the two citizens that were going to be in the shoot-don't-shoot?
I would agree with that.
Okay. And as the handler, that's why you took them back in the room and gave them safety instructions there.
Yes, sir.
And those are part of safety checks, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you brought them out or brought one out at a time to Chief Lewis, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he did talk about safety of the guns and things like that with you present, correct?
Yes, sir.
And all those pictures where you're there, the reason you're constantly on the wing of Miss Knowlton is because you're going to be dealing with her throughout the scenario.
Yes, sir.
And you'd undertaken that role, right?
Yes, sir.
And whether you were listed as the person that was going to do it at the beginning of the event or on the itinerary, it's clear in this case that you, when you got involved and came in your Class A's, when you got involved, you decided, I will take this part over, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was made clear to everybody else around you that saw what you were doing.
Correct.
Okay. Now, as the handler for her then, you would agree with me that when a scenario starts for shoot, don't shoot, there's a beginning and there's an end.
Yes, sir.
The beginning is you're going to be over with the civilian like you were with Miss Knowlton, and at the point where you've done your last set of final instructions, which you again do those even after the chief talked to her, right?
Yes, sir.
When you do your last final instructions, okay, everything's set, you're ready to go, and then you let her, that starts the scenario.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes these scenarios are done with somebody pulling up in a police car, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And on this night, because the rain was coming in, it was decided we're just going to let her walk up and do it and not pull another car up here, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And because she was left-handed, the holster thing kind of went out the door because it was a right-handed holster.
Yes, sir.
So the instructions you gave her were about how to properly hold the gun with her left hand and then go ahead and approach, and you're just going to approach on foot, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so that's the beginning of the scenario. The end part of the scenario is whenever the event is over between the civilian and the role-playing officer, there's a command that's yelled called end scenario, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were prepared to do end scenario, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the scenario itself then, as you're handling her, comes under your control, correct?
Yes, sir.
You understand in this scenario that Lee Cole, when discharging a blank, was required and trained and expected to discharge the blank in a safe manner, correct?
Correct.
And that would involve pointing it towards the ground and away from the civilian, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it would definitely not involve leveling it up at the civilian and firing off rounds, correct?
Agreed. Yes, sir.
The other part of the blanks is that the sound is what's relevant to the scenario, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so basically you could fire off just one or two rounds to signify that's when the suspect would have done something and either you had shot or not shot, correct?
Yes, sir.
It's not required to empty a whole magazine, is it?
No, sir.
Not required to empty 4 shots or 5 shots at somebody, is it?
No, sir.
Did you that night see the vehicle that was in between Ms. Knowlton and Lee Cole?
Yes, sir.
Did you see the marks on the vehicle from the bullets hitting the hood?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. Did you see any bullet holes?
I saw one.
You don't have any particular direct recollection of what where Lee Cole was aiming, do you?
No, sir.
Safe to say that this event and your presence in that night was difficult for you?
Yes, sir.
Parts of this you have wanted to kind of put out?
Objection to relevance.
Sustained.
After the event, did you see Officer Cole approach?
You mean?
Officer Cole fired the weapon at some point after that. Did you see him in a state appearing to be affected, emotional, I should say?
Yes, sir.
Did you see him in a state to be appearing to be under the stress of the event?
Yes, sir.
At that moment, did he make a statement to you where he said that he had just used these blanks before?
Not at that moment. This was,
Let me rephrase it then. In the sense of when you saw him emotional and affected by the stress of it, at the moment he made the statement to you, was he in the same condition that you saw him as far as being emotional and under the stress of the event?
yes, sir.
Okay. At some moment, under the moment of the stress of the event, near to the time of the event, did he make a statement to you in reference that he had just used these blanks before?
Yes, sir.
When you were the commander, did you regularly send out notifications to personnel that they were required to register any guns that they wanted to carry with the department?
I did that as the lieutenant, the employee development coordinator. Yes, I did.
Okay.
And I-
And so these reminders were done because any gun that a person wanted to carry as a secondary weapon of any nature needed to go through both an approval process and a qualification process, correct?
Correct.
And that was incumbent upon the officer that had the gun to register to their gun, right?
Correct.
The staff meeting that you mentioned about this incident, I believe you're trying to remember everybody that was there. Katie Heck was also at that meeting?
She could have been. Yes, sir.
What about Captain Siashini?
He could have been, sir. I'm not sure.
Okay, you just don't recall?
I don't recall.
Okay.
The people that I listed might not have. I was just going off of my recollection. I'm not sure who was present.
When the prosecutor asked you earlier if there was a briefing with Lee Cole, and you said, well, not a formalized one, you did have a discussion with him about the scenario that was going to take place. And you basically went over with him, it's the same scenario we always do, correct?
That was basically the conversation. I had a conversation with him about the mask, and then I said, we're starting out with the suspicious person scenario.
So you went over that with him to make sure he knew which scenario was starting first in the shoot, don't shoot.
Yes, sir.
Same thing with the static display. When the gentlemen were setting and the women were setting up the statics, you came over to them and told them, okay, crowd's getting ready to come out, we're getting ready to go, here they come, correct?
Yes, sir.
David Lipker, do you know him to be a firearms instructor in the agency?
Yes, sir, I do.
And he was the watch commander that night?
Yes, sir.
Just wait a moment.
You may.
Afterward, just to clarify one other thing, when I asked you about the taser wounds, the taser cartridges that you would use with the citizens, even though you're not using them currently with your officers, are still safe to use, correct?
Correct.
And those are not necessarily scenarios as much as they are a situation where somebody gets to basically shoot a taser into something.
Correct.
And it's not a person.
No, sir.
I pass it.
Can you redirect?
Mr. Woodard, contract forth a little bit on the YouTube scenario.
Yes, sir.
Was Tom Lewis the person that told you about it for the first time?
Yes, sir.
Was he one of the people that implemented it at the Punta Gorda Police Department?
I'm not sure how it got, I heard about it from him saying that we are going to implement, or we're looking at implementing these scenarios here. Outside of that, I don't know what went into the coordination or the conversation. I wasn't party to any of that.
Have you ever said previously that he was involved in the implementation of that?
I'm not sure, sir. I would think if it came from him to me, that he was probably involved in some way in establishing it, but I don't know what his role was.
You testified a moment ago that Katie had coordinated the event. Is that right?
That's my belief, yes, sir.
How did she coordinate?
I do not know.
You don't know what she did,
I don't know what she did at all, sir.
but you think she coordinated it.
I believe so.
Was she responsible for checking Officer Cole's gun?
No, sir.
I think you testified before we took a break for lunch that Chief Lewis obviously did the welcome presentation. Did he do tours also?
I believe he did, yes, sir.
Was he present at the static displays outside?
Yes, sir, he was.
Was he a participant in the shoot, don't shoot scenario?
Yes, sir, he was.
Did you ever give Mary Knowlton a helmet for the scenario?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you ever give her any sort of protective gear?
No, sir.
Why not?
Because I did not think that Lee Cole's gun fired projectiles. I thought that it was a starter's pistol that could not fire projectiles.
What kind of starter's pistol did you use?
Just that could fire could fire blanks. That's it.
Do you all have those in your armory?
No, sir.
Where did you think the starter pistol came from?
I thought it was a training article that was specifically given to the K-9 officer.
You were his supervisor, right?
For about a month, yes, sir.
You had no idea what kind of guns he had in his car?
I did not.
Can blanks expel a projectile?
Not to my knowledge.
Your answer is no, or you don't know?
I don't know.
I believe you testified on cross a moment ago that Lieutenant Salzman was the safety officer for Officer Cole and Shane Chodakowski, or is that correct?
I don't remember stating that, sir. Today?
Were they responsible for, was Chris Salzman responsible for checking them?
I don't recall stating that, sir. You did.
Well, is that true or not?
I don't know who was in charge of checking them.
So
My understanding is that the two role players would have checked each other.
As a result of what took place on August 9th, have you been disciplined for that?
No, sir, I have not.
Ever been written up for misconduct or failing to do anything in that event?
No, sir.
What is Chris Salzman's rank at the Punta Gorda Police Department?
He is a lieutenant.
Are you aware of any discipline he has faced as a result of this?
I'm not, sir.
Do you think that there should have been someone assigned to check Lee Cole's gun that day?
I go back to, I think, the role players, as has been the practice in the past, would check each other. And I also think that Lee Cole had ample opportunity to ask any one of the 15 officers present that night to check his firearm.
Did anyone ask him?
I don't know that.
You testified on cross-examination that if you had been the designated safety officer for Lee Cole and you'd opened up his revolver, you wouldn't have been able to identify the wad cutter ammo, right? Had
I been the designated safety officer that night, I would not have identified that as anything other than a blank.
Do you think it's worth a shot to have someone try to identify it?
The more safety, the better.
Did you ever tell FDLE when they interviewed you in either one of the 2 times, did you ever tell them anything about your role as the end scene handler for Mary Knowlton?
No, sir.
So today's the first time you've told anyone about that?
The way it was presented, that was I guess if looking back as me bringing her down there, I mean, I guess you could say that I would have been the one to call end scenario, but I never perceived myself as in charge of any scenario. I was the way the question was presented to me, sir.
You didn't think you were in charge of her for that scenario?
I believe I was in charge with, yes.
Yes, you were?
I believe that I was in charge of her. I agree that I was her handler.
And when she walked up into the 2 patrol cars to start the scenario, how far away from her were you?
Approximately 15 feet, 10 feet, something like that.
Why were you 10 to 15 feet away from her?
We usually form, there's usually like 4 or 5 of us around there that keep everybody out of that area
Why did you do that?
for the Sims rounds, to make sure that the Sims rounds don't come towards the group.
And like if she were to turn around and fire back towards the group,
Correct.
if she were to do that, you said you're 10 to 15 feet away, you think it would take a bit of time to get to her?
Yes, sir.
Where were you standing in relation to the other members of the chamber that were watching?
Probably 5 feet away,
From them?
I'm guessing.
You've seen the video in the case?
No, sir, I have not.
What is the point of the shoot, don't shoot scenario? What's it trying to accomplish?
To show citizens how stressful a law enforcement call can be.
What is Lee Cole trying to accomplish by firing that gun?
Sustained.
Why does Lee Cole fire a gun in that scenario?
To show if you don't take control of a scenario, it can be very dangerous for the officer.
He's supposed to fire a couple rounds to surprise her?
Yes, sir.
And then, obviously, the point is to see if she's supposed to shoot back or not, right?
Correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Briefly.
So were you asked by FDLE about beginning and end scenario?
No, sir.
Were you asked by the state in the whole time since August 9th to the day about beginning and end scenario?
No, sir.
Were you asked by FDLE or the state in the whole time as far as any statements that Lee Cole made to you while you were out there dealing with the masks?
No, sir.
Were you charged with a crime in this case?
No, sir.
Sir, you may step down.
Thank you.
It's not released, though, yeah. You understand?
Yes.
You've been asked to speak to the attorney about that.
Okay.
Attorney's approach. Ladies and gentlemen, I know we've only been doing this about an hour, but given the length of the testimony of the next witness, I think now would be a good time to take a recess, stretch, use the restroom if you need to, and then we'll bring you back out.
for Your Honor?
Yes, thank you. Great, you may be seated. Call your next witness.
Chris Salzman.
Raise your right hand. Clerk, sworn.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this class will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Good afternoon. Please make sure you speak into the microphone.
Yes, ma'am.
You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell me your name, please?
Christopher Salzman,
Can you spell your last name for the record, please?
S-A-L-S-M-A-N.
Obviously, you work at Punta Gorda Police Department.
Yes, sir.
How long have you worked there?
18 and a half years.
What is your current position there?
Lieutenant in employee development.
What was your position back in August of 2016?
Same position, employee development coordinator.
Obviously, in charge of employee development, training, recruitment, things like that.
Yes, sir.
Before you became lieutenant of employee development, who was in the position before you?
Captain Woodard,
How long have you known Chief Lewis?
2 decades.
Fair to say you all are friends?
Yes.
Back on August 9th of 2016, were you present at the Chamber of Commerce Police Night at PGPD?
Yes, sir.
What was the purpose of that event?
To introduce the members of the community to the operations of the police department, different functions, different programs that we offer, different systems that we use to fight crime within the city, to give them an introduction to everything that we do.
Katie Heck coordinate that event?
Yes.
Did you organize it?
Yes, sir.
Was that also coordinated with the Chief of Police?
Yes.
Was Katie Heck there that night?
No.
Who were the primary officers involved in the event?
You mean those present?
Yes.
That would be the Chief of Police, Chief Lewis, Captain Jason Siskini, Captain Jeff Woodard, myself, and there were several other officers that were in the vicinity, and there were role players, which would have been Officer Lee Cole and Officer Shane Chodakowski.
The tours, who did the tours?
I conducted one. I believe Captain Siskini conducted the second, and if I'm not mistaken, it is Officer DeVault that conducted the other.
My understanding is there were 3 different tour groups, does that sound right?
Correct, yes.
Do you remember which one of those groups you led?
I led the last group to leave the training room, the third group then.
Who were the 2 officers playing roles in the shoot that was shooting?
That would be Officer Lee Cole and Officer Shane Chodakowski.
Were you and Tom Lewis involved in that scenario as well?
Yes.
Can you explain to us how the first shoot-don't-shoot scenario is supposed to work that night?
It was supposed to be a suspicious person call. Miss Knowlton was playing the role of the police officer. Officer Lee Cole was playing the officer of the bad guy. There were 2 vehicles that were lined up as though they'd be parked in a parking lot. As Miss Knowlton was to approach this suspicious person, it was to see if she can get control of the situation and address him verbally, and he was to try to move away from her while she was speaking to him and go to the front of the vehicle to retrieve a weapon and utilized that weapon to create a loud noise simulating a gunshot, and see what her reaction would be.
How was he supposed to make a loud noise?
Utilizing a handgun that was supposed to be loaded with either simunition rounds or blanks, and fire 2 rounds to the ground.
Your testimony is that he was supposed to fire it into the ground?
Pretty much so, yes.
Do you recall giving a statement to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement when the crime was being investigated? I'm talking about back on August 10th of 2016.
Yes, sir.
Well, giving that statement to Special Agent Mike Ortiz at the Punta Gorda Police Department.
Yes, I do.
And before you gave that statement, you were sworn in, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Swore to tell the truth?
Yes.
And you did tell the truth in that statement, correct?
Yes.
Page 11, that's it. Going on to page 12. All right, Lieutenant Salzman, on that date you were asked by Special Agent Ortiz, explain to me how that was going to work today, talking about the shoot, don't shoot scenario. The scenario, the first scenario is basically a suspicious person complaint. There were 2 vehicles that were parked perpendicular to the building, and the officer, who was one of our class participants, was to be armed with a simunitions Glock weapon similar to what's carried by the officers. She was dispatched to a suspicious person complaint. She was to get out, make verbal contact with the perpetrator, who was wearing a hood, acting suspiciously between the 2 vehicles. When the verbal interaction didn't get her information that she was requesting, going on to page 12, line 1 through 6, counsel, he was to respond to the back of the vehicle where he was going to retrieve a weapon that was on the rear bumper, and at that point, direct the weapon in her direction and fire off 1 or 2 of the blanks and basically get her attention and see what her response would be. You told FDLE that?
Yes, sir.
And you agree with me that on that date you said he was to direct the weapon in her direction?
To clarify that, sir, in that statement was taken after midnight, after a 20-hour shift, essentially. When I say to them, point the weapon in her direction, that means to allow her to see that there is a weapon in play in this scenario. So not to point it at her.
He was to direct it in her direction?
To come out from behind the vehicle, because the vehicle is facing away from her, it's facing the building. Come out from behind the vehicle and basically display the weapon. Brandish the weapon, she knows there's a weapon, and when 2 rounds are fired off, that is what is to get her attention.
And obviously the point is to make her decide whether she's going to shoot back or not.
Correct.
Did you know Mrs. Knowlton?
I had met Mrs. Knowlton, yes.
How had you met her?
Through Chamber of Commerce events.
Punta Gorda Police Department coordinator?
Yes.
Who prepared the simunitions weapon for Mrs. Knowlton?
Captain Woodard.
And did Captain Woodard present Tom Lewis with the simunitions weapon before the scenario started?
Yes.
And did you see that take place?
Yes.
Can you tell us what happened?
Captain Woodard had exited the building with Miss Knowlton. They approached Chief Lewis, who was standing up on the curb. If I remember correctly, Captain Woodard presented the weapon to Chief Lewis. Chief Lewis showed it to the crowd, explained to them briefly how simunition rounds work, that it has a paint ball at the end of it. And after that brief presentation to the crowd, the weapon was handed back to Captain Woodard, and Captain Woodard began to walk Miss Knowlton over to where the scenario would take place.
How were the citizens selected to participate in this event?
There were notebooks that were placed on the tables where the citizens were going to have their initial meet with the chief, and inside the notebooks there were 4 cards placed, 2 that said taser, 2 that I believe said gun, and if the folks that had picked up those notebooks were so inclined, they would then be invited to participate in these role plays.
You know how many people were selected?
4.
When those people, I guess, were taken back for instruction by Captain Woodard or by any other officers, did you all know anything about those people?
Not particularly, no.
And I know a lot of them weren't strangers or members of the chamber, but what I mean is, did you know if they had any experience with firearms?
No, I had no background knowledge of that.
Did you know if they had any medical conditions?
No, I did not.
Any heart problems or anything like that?
No.
After Lee Cole shot in the scenario, did you clear the weapon after that?
I did.
How did you do that?
I opened the revolver, depressed the plunger, ejecting the rounds that were, the spent rounds that were in there, and placed them on the trunk of the vehicle that was to the right of Miss Knowlton.
And the point of that, obviously, is to make sure no more bullets are fired, right?
Correct.
Do you remember how many casings, cartridge casings, were in these revolver cylinders?
I believe it was 4 out of the possible 5.
Were you there when the crime scene tape was put up for FDLE to come in?
That was happening as we were bringing all the rest of the folks that were involved back into the building, so I didn't see it actually set up. They were just beginning to do it when I departed the area.
Is it possible for a blank to have a wad that can be projected when it's fired?
I don't have enough expertise on that subject to answer that.
Did you attend a staff meeting on the morning of August 9th?
Yes, sir, I did.
What happened at that meeting?
It's a typical morning meeting. We went over the events from the previous evening. During that meeting, the roster of the events for the evening coming up for the event were going to be, they were passed out, and we'd briefly gone over that.
And I'm sorry if you covered this. Who was there at that meeting?
To the best of my recollection, I would say that Chief Lewis, Captain Woodard, myself, Lieutenant Heck, Accreditation Manager Gloria Sapanik, and I believe Captain Shiskini.
And those are pretty much all, obviously, the chief of police, captains, and lieutenants, some of the higher ranking individuals in the agency.
Yes, sir.
And was the Chamber of Police night discussed by Chief Lewis that day?
Yes.
Were you assigned to a role in the event?
Yes, according to that roster, yes.
Were you not assigned to a role?
No, I was assigned to that role.
Do you have any dispute with the
No. No.
Did Chief Lewis lead that staff meeting that morning?
The chief leads every staff meeting.
It's his meeting, basically. Right?
Yes.
What was your role supposed to be that night?
To conduct one of the 3 tours, and also to participate in the shoot, don't shoot scenario, and to have items for display for the question and answer portion after.
Since August 9th, have you talked with Tom Lewis about what happened?
Yes.
How many times?
Well, after the event of August 9th, we worked very closely, and there were numerous times when we had discussed events of that day.
When was the most recent time you talked to him?
About events of that day,
Period.
just last week.
Talked to him about, when was the last time you talked about the events of that day?
it's been some time.
I don't mean to push you for an
No.
exact date, but are we talking about days or weeks or months?
Weeks.
Have you talked to Tom Lewis at all about the evidence that the state was going to present in the case, or any of the witness statements, things like that?
Not particulars of any one particular statement, no.
Like more generalized? Or?
Yes.
Have you and he discussed why the state would be calling you as a witness in this case?
No, because to me that's fairly obvious because I was present that day.
Have you talked with Mr. Romine?
I have.
Is that in person or over the phone?
That was in person.
How many times have you talked?
Once.
When was that?
Second week of June 11th or 12th. I don't have the exact date.
Okay. And where did that meeting take place?
In Tampa at Mr. Romine's office.
How did you get there?
Drove with Chief Lewis.
Was there anyone else there in the car with you?
Yes,
Who was that?
that was Jim Nichols.
Jim Nichols work with the Punta Gorda Police Department?
He's a reserve volunteer with the police department.
The weapon you cleared, Lee Cole's firearm, was a .38 revolver, correct?
Yes.
Was that his personal firearm?
To my knowledge, yes, I know that now.
That's not a department-issued firearm?
It is not.
Did you ever check his weapon yourself that day?
No, sir.
Why not?
When the scenario began, by the time I got out there, the scenario was in place. I had seen Captain Woodard and Detective DeVault inside the armory preparing simunitions, ammunition, and when I had gone back there to check with Captain Woodard to see if he had needed assistance in conducting the safety checks on the weapons and ammunition, I had been called back to conduct the tour. I was trying to get in there to take care of that before my portion of the tour of the building had begun.
And you had the last tour group?
Correct.
When you got out to the back parking lot, was everything set up already?
Yes.
Was Tom Lewis out there in the parking lot at that point?
Yes.
You weren't assigned to check Lee Cole's gun yourself?
Not specifically, no.
What do you mean by not specifically?
Well, when it comes to any type of simulated weapons or simunitions, munitions, each officer is a safety officer. Every officer is to self-check, and they are to check each other. And that's...
You mentioned simunitions. Is that any different from a live gun?
Yes, a simunitions weapon is different from a live firearm.
No, I understand that, but the safety checks, is it any different for a real gun versus a simunitions weapon?
Well, you're looking for something different in a simunitions check than you are a live firearm.
So, do you do checks with a live firearm before something like a shoot, don't shoot scenario?
There shouldn't be a live firearm in a shoot, don't shoot scenario.
Was there any one person assigned to check Lee Cole?
Not to my knowledge.
To make sure he wasn't using a live firearm?
Not to my knowledge.
Make sure that it was some kind of starter pistol or whatever?
Not to my knowledge.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination?
How you doing, sir?
Okay, Lieutenant Sullivan, just to touch base, you understood that I'd want to talk to you about your statements and what testimony you may give in this trial, is that correct?
Yes.
And you you agreed to come up and talk to me at my office, is that right?
Yes.
That car pulled up there.
Mhm.
When you came up there, did I took you to a conference room where it's just you and I?
Yes, and, yes, sir.
When I interviewed you about your thing, I talked to you about it outside the presence of Tom Lewis or anybody else for that matter.
Correct.
I advised you basically, I didn't care for you to tell me one thing or the other, who you knew, I just want to know what you knew, what the truth of what you would see or testify about, correct?
Yes.
And we went over your statement, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, let's start off with this. You have been in law enforcement how long now?
18-plus years with the city of Punta Gorda.
On August 9th, your position was the lieutenant in charge of training?
Yes.
And how long have you been in that position?
Approximately 10 months.
And as you, I believe, testified, Captain Woodard preceded you as a training officer, correct?
Yes, correct.
You have years of experience in that?
Yes.
Let me jump forward. The lieutenant that was in charge of the community events that we testified was KENNETH, correct?
Yes.
And she organized this event, correct?
Yes.
And she selected who's going to be there to be working this, correct?
Yes.
In the shoot, don't shoot, there were 4 of you at least listed on the itinerary as working this event, right?
Yes.
Lee Cole and Officer Chodakowski were going to be the role players, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, yes?
Yes, I'm sorry.
And Tom Lewis was going to be narrating with the full crowd, correct?
Yes.
And when you first started this, before you had any contact with Captain Woodard, you expected that you were listed on that as the training officer, that you were going to do any type of safety checks or set up or helping with that you needed to do for that event, correct?
Yes, correct.
Now, had Captain Woodard not shown up and the state asked you questions of why did you think he was doing things on this? Remember that question?
Yes.
And you mentioned you thought it because he was in the armory, correct?
Yes.
There was actually an event, though, that preceded the armory, wasn't it? Do you remember being in the conference room and overhearing him saying he's going to go take care of the guns or the armory?
Yes, I did.
The council testified.
Ms. Kane?
We approached?
No. Ms. Kane?
Were you in the conference? Were you in the conference room?
The training room where the
Yes.
presentation was being made? Yes.
Yes. Okay. And while you were in there, up until the point Captain Woodard approached you, did you have an intent to go ahead and do the safety checks that need to be done?
Yes.
Okay. Did that change for a reason?
Yes.
Okay. Did that change because Captain Woodard said something to you?
Yes, he did.
What did he say to you?
Objection to hearsay?
State of mind. What did Captain Woodard tell you?
Told me that he was going to the armory to prepare the weapon.
And what did you take that to mean as far as what was happening with the safety checks for the guns?
That he would be preparing the weapons that the department uses for munitions for use in this role-play exercise.
You also take it to mean if you do it in safety checks and whatever weapons are being used as far as recoil or whatever safety checks need to be done for protective gear and all of that.
Yes.
Now, when that happened, you already knew that in your position in 10 months as the training person, that for future demonstrations, the safety checks were going to fall to you, correct?
Yes.
And you knew that Captain Woodard had a lot of years of experience in how he conducted his safety checks, correct?
Yes.
And so you decided at that point, you were okay with that point, because you thought you would shadow him on some of these, correct?
Correct.
And you learned more from him, correct?
Yes.
In some of these pictures that we see there, where you're standing with Captain Woodard, that's you observing what he's instructing the people to do with the guns and how he handles his scenarios for safety checks.
Correct.
Did you need a written report to make you aware that safety checks need to be done for any public demonstration or shoot-don't-shoot scenario or any type of event involving simulations or blanks or anything else?
No, sir.
Is that something inherently known as far as your job, a training officer to do checks and things of that nature?
Yes.
Who was Lee Cole's captain that night on scene?
Captain Woodard.
Lee Cole was under the supervision of Captain Woodard in his regular duties, correct?
Yes.
And so he would have also, at the time of that event, still been under the supervision of Captain Woodard as Captain Woodard was his captain, correct?
Correct.
When Captain Woodard left to go do the armory safety check, you then at some point, let me back up. When he left, what was Chief Lewis doing?
He was completing his presentation, the initial presentation where he met the group and explained to them what was going to occur through the evening, went through some PowerPoint slides to show, fiscal responsibilities of the department and various things that we do through the community.
And when Captain Woodard left, he left before that was over, I think.
Yes.
And when he left to do it, you at some point subsequently got up to go down to the armory also, correct?
Correct.
The point of the armory is you were going to serve, as we said, in the secondary role because you're going to be doing all this for all future ones, right?
Yes, sir.
And when you got to the door, tell me what you saw.
Inside the armory, which is a very small room, it's approximately 5 feet by 9 feet with a counter right in front of it. I observed the simunition rounds open in a box. There was a blue gun on the counter. Captain Woodard was standing in front of those, and Detective DeBalt was next to him. And they were examining the ammunition, verbally and physically inspecting it to make sure that they're safe to use.
You thought Detective DeBalt was capable enough to do a secondary check?
Absolutely.
And so at that point, you started getting called for your display, I think, for your tour?
Yes, Ms. Sapanic had come up and tapped me on the shoulder and told me that Chief Lewis had completed his presentation and that they were ready to begin the tours, and we were trying to keep on time, on schedule.
Okay. Did you have anything to do as far as the static displays? As far as setting up?
No.
What about as far as the presentations out there?
Well, when I had walked my group out, when the static display was taking place, there was one gentleman that I had engaged in conversation with, and I remained with him while we visited the various stations that were set up for that.
If that happens, and it's known how the FBO comes to investigate it, you remain at the scene the whole time until it's time for you to be interviewed by FBO?
Yes.
So you at that point, I think you said what, you worked a 20-hour shift at that point?
Approximately. I think I came in that day at 7 a.m. and they interviewed me shortly after midnight.
And at the time of your interview, nobody had known about wad cutters and computers, correct?
No, I had no idea.
And at the time of your interview, I guess the incident was about 5 hours old at that point?
Yes, give or take.
Okay. Were you present when Captain Woodard brought the simulation gun out and handed it to Chief Lewis as his first draft?
Yes.
And Captain Woodard basically gave Ms. Knowlton a badge, and a sim gun, a magazine, and prepped her in the scenario prior to going out to Chief Lewis.
As far as I know, I believe that's how the chain of events went.
And let me clarify that. He had the sim gun with him.
Yes.
You recall Chief Lewis was showing the crowd the ammunition weapon, talking about soap pellets, things of that nature.
Yes.
And after that presentation, did you see Ms. Knowlton actually walk to a different area with Captain Woodard?
Yes.
And did you go with her?
They actually walked to the area where I was.
Okay. And so there's a photograph that has you and Captain Woodard and Ms. Knowlton and Ms. Stepanek all four together with Captain Woodard holding the gun. Okay. In that time frame, what was being instructed? Was the final instructions?
Captain Woodard was actually supplying Ms. Knowlton with some further safety instructions. Proper use of the weapon, indexing her finger along the side of the gun. Don't put your finger inside the trigger guard unless you intend to use the weapon. Just basic instructions.
You testified earlier when you came out that you presumed already that everything had been properly checked because the scenario was set up, correct?
Correct.
When you came out, Captain Woodard was already out there, is that right?
Yes.
When he was out there, Nicole was out there, is that correct?
Correct.
And nothing to you, as far as you know, the scenario was done, seemed amiss, like it wasn't quite ready to go. Everybody appeared to be in positions of, all right, let's get this started.
Yes, sir.
Did you see Lee pull in the proper safety gear as the suspect?
Yes.
And did you know that that was a function of the safety officer to make sure that Lee had the proper safety gear?
Yes.
In these scenarios, where you testified earlier that the officers are responsible, the first line of responsibility about the safety of their guns and safety checks, correct?
Yes.
And if an officer has not gone through proper safety checks, is it incumbent upon the officer to alert somebody else to that?
Yes.
Your agency did not carry 38 caliber live rounds, correct?
No.
And you spoke before about using a live firearm. In the reference of a live firearm, you're referring to a live round that would come out with a projectile bullet type of thing?
Yes, sir.
You understand that in demonstrations that blanks are used, correct?
Yes.
And blanks, if used safely, are they ever pointed at anybody?
No.
Let's take this a step further and say that Captain Woodard hadn't been there the whole night and that you had undertaken the duty of the safety checks. You set up this ammunition gun, come out and give him Nicole whatever protection he needed, and then that you said, okay, let me see the weapon that you're using and doing an inspection. Okay?
Yes.
Have you ever dealt with a wad cutter before?
No, sir.
Did you know what a wad cutter was?
No, sir.
Does your agency carry wad cutters?
We do not.
Did you ever receive any training, to your knowledge, in 18 years on distinguishing wad cutters from blanks?
No, sir.
You know what a bullet looks like?
Yes.
Describe to the jury what a bullet looks like.
Bullet looks like a metal sleeve with a primer at the bottom and a metal projectile on the top.
And is it kind of what we know is kind of like the dome at the top is the projectile?
Yes, sir.
The blank, obviously the projectile's not there, the blank's kind of level off, correct?
Yes, sir.
Let's take this all the way further. You now are then going through Lee Cole's gun, let's say, in your position as a training officer and a safety officer. You opened up the gun. Have you seen the wad cutter since then? A photo of what it looks like?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Would you have been in a position, even if you had done the safety check, to identify that as a wad cutter?
No, sir.
would you have been in a position to distinguish that from a blank?
I don't believe so.
Would you have been looking for in a safety check, looking for a bullet that contains a projectile domed head on it and making sure that's not in the gun?
Absolutely, yes.
Besides the role that Captain Woodard undertook that night, would you agree with me that any other officer out there could function doing a safety check on Nicole's gun if you alerted to them that I haven't had my safety checks done?
Yes.
Did you know at any point who Nicole was with when he loaded that gun?
No.
Did you see the vehicle that was struck by the gun?
Yes.
Did you notice a hole on the side of the vehicle?
Yes, I did.
Did you notice marks on, I believe, the hood of the vehicle?
Not at the time when the event unfolded.
Did you have any opportunity, did you do any depositions in any other Nicole case in this at all?
No, sir.
Did you have an opportunity to meet with the state as part of the voluntary meeting to discuss what the testimony would be?
Yes.
About when was that?
Actually, I believe that was June 12th.
You may. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may.
Lieutenant Sullivan, what kind of gun did you think you brought to Nicole's?
A department-owned .38 caliber simunitions weapon.
You talked to him in the parking lot before the event started that night?
Did I speak to him in the parking lot? I don't believe so.
Did you ever talk to him about the scenario of you shooting that gun?
Not in any detail, no.
Simunitions guns and simunition ammo, are those kept in the armory at PGPD?
Yes.
Are any real guns kept there?
Yes.
Do you have access to the armory?
Yes.
Back on August 9th, 2016, did you have access to the armory?
Yes.
Do you keep records of what's in Punta Gorda's armory?
Yes.
Is that your job currently?
Yes.
And did you keep records for 2016?
There were, yes. Yes.
Captain Cischini, did he ask you for any assistance in complying with the subpoena for those armory records?
Didn't know there was a subpoena.
Do you know what the 2016, are there records from 2016?
There was an audit an inventory that was conducted in 2016. However, the final memo was not completed.
Has it been completed since?
No.
Are you aware of any records at the Punta Gorda Police Department that would show whether there was this munitions weapon that you thought Nicole was using in the armory at the time?
Can you restate that?
Okay. You stated you thought he was using a .38 revolver munitions weapon, right?
Correct.
Are you aware of any records that the agency has that show that weapon was in fact in the armory on August 9th of last year?
Well, yes, it was. There's two records. There's the one from 2015 that shows that in our inventory, and then there's the one that was recently completed for 2017.
Is there anything from 2016?
No.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
All right, sir, you may step down. State, call your next witness.
Hey, call KENNETH.
You may inquire.
Good afternoon. Could you please state your name
Katie Heck,
and where are you employed?
the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been employed?
About 4 weeks.
And what's your current job position?
Public Information Officer,
Where were you employed prior to the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office?
the Punta Gorda Police Department.
And how long were you employed there?
11 years.
What capacity were you employed there?
As a police officer.
So now at the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office as a public information officer, are you a sworn law enforcement officer?
No.
In your time at the Punta Gorda Police Department, what positions did you hold?
I was a road patrol officer, was a school resource officer, was a canine officer, a corporal on the road, which is like a supervisor, and then the community affairs lieutenant.
I'm sorry, the community what?
Community services lieutenant.
And what did that entail?
Running our community programs, community outreach like crime prevention, education, dealing with the media, kind of a catch-all position with the community.
Who held that position prior to you?
For a very brief period, it was Chris Salzman, and then it was Joe King for an extended amount of time.
And when you took over, what month did you take over?
It was just after Butch Arnell retired, so October of 2015.
So when August 9th came around, you've been in that position approximately 9-10 months?
Yes.
And did Chris Salzman or Joe King ever go over the Citizens Academies with you?
No.
What it entailed?
No.
Did they tell you what your role was?
No.
Did they tell you what your duties were?
No.
What about Tom Lewis? Did he ever sit down and go over the Citizens Academies with you?
Not until one was coming up.
Okay. And did he tell you what your role was going to be?
I was kind of the facilitator.
Meaning what?
We had a stored itinerary of how the night went on our, I guess it's like a shared storage drive for the city.
Okay. And
So my job was to just kind of go over that form, make sure we had people for each job that was already listed on the form.
is this form like a template that's been used previously?
Yes.
So what actual changes did you have to make to it?
The date, the people that were doing it, just depending on shift work and trying to get people to not have overtime and stuff, so just to get people.
And were you responsible for finding different people for different roles?
Yes.
So let's, maybe the static displays. How did you determine who you wanted to use for static displays?
We have people that are on each division, so for the bike team, finding someone that was on the bike team that maybe either was going off shift that night that way they could just stay late for work. For the different tours, it was basically our command staff. That was kind of a given. Most of the command staff stayed and did the tours. And then the chief does the chief's introduction. So some of it was kind of a repeat every
Okay, so the chief would do
team.
the chief's introductions, and then you have the tours, which was always command staff?
For the most part, yes,
Okay,
yeah.
And then you would do the static displays, and you would get somebody from each department?
Yes,
So road patrol would have somebody from road patrol?
yes.
Did Tom Lewis ever tell you that you were responsible for the shoot, don't shoot scenario?
No.
Okay, what was your understanding about that?
About,
Who was going to be involved in the shoot, don't shoot scenario?
it was Tom, and then I think it was Jeff Woodard were from the last one, so it was kind of a carryover that they were the ones that did it again.
How did you know that Tom Lewis would be participating in the one on August 9th?
I think well, I put him on there, but it was conversation that they were the ones that did it. They were familiar with it, and they were the ones that ran it.
And did Tom Lewis always participate in the shoot, don't shoot?
To my knowledge, I had sat through one other one where I did like the itinerary.
And so is it a yes from your knowledge Tom Lewis was involved in the shoot, don't shoot scenarios?
Yes.
Was your role ever, or did it ever encompass any kind of safety precautions regarding the Citizens Academy?
No.
You were never responsible for any of that?
No.
Were you present on August 9th, 2016?
No.
Were you working previously that day?
Yes.
And what time did you leave?
Probably about 4 o'clock.
So the one on August 9th, I think you said would have been the second one that you had done the itinerary for?
Yes.
And was that, how many of these Citizen Academies have you seen?
I had seen the one previous to that, which I believe was for a Leadership Charlotte class.
And there's been testimony that the Citizens Academy started a few years prior. When they originated, did they have the shoot, don't shoot scenario?
I don't know to my knowledge.
Or came later, or from the beginning? How long were you the community services supervisor for?
From that October 2015 date until I just left.
Okay, and while you held that position, did you ever supervise the patrol?
Yes.
And what dates did you supervise the patrol?
From October to, I think it was June or July of 2016.
And as a community services lieutenant, did that position traditionally supervise the K-9 officer?
It did not.
Okay, so how did you end up supervising the patrol?
Because of my previous K-9 experience, when Butch retired and Tom took over, we kind of reassigned different duties. And just with the K-9 experience, we thought it would be a good idea to maybe have me supervise him because I knew about what training was required and different things he'd need to order. So just to help facilitate the K-9 program.
If Leopold needed to order something, let's like ammunition, did he go through you?
Yes, the form would.
Did he have to go through you?
He didn't. If I wasn't there, it could skip me and go to the operations captain.
Anything he needed to order, it would go through you, and then you would make the request?
Yeah, I would do the initial approval, and then it would still have to go through the process through the chief's signature and then go to purchasing.
Okay, so at the end of the day, the chief still has to sign off on it?
Oh, sorry, yes.
What were you under the impression, or did you know what kind of firearm Nicole was using to train his canine?
I didn't know exactly what it was, no.
Did you know if it was a simulation weapon or if it was a real weapon? Did you know?
I thought it was a blank gun. That's what we called it in K-9. So, I did not. I trained with Charlotte County when I was in K-9, and the city of Punta Gorda did not purchase me a gun for blanks.
Okay, so Nicole had to get his own gun in order to train his canine?
I don't know if he had to. Like I said, when I trained with the county, I just used, I didn't personally use it, but when I trained, they used their gun.
Okay, so was
I never had one.
somebody else's, or you would have had to have gotten
Yes,
your own?
yes.
Had you ever seen Lee Cole use his revolver to train his dog?
No.
Did you ever see him use it in a demonstration or some kind of community event?
I saw it used in a canine demo.
When was that?
That was in the spring of 2016. So April or May.
So during the summer of 2016, did there come an occasion where you were cleaning out items from your house?
Yes.
Okay, so what prompted that?
We moved. We sold our house and moved.
When you say you,
Sorry, my husband.
and was he also in law enforcement?
Yes.
And was he previously a canine officer?
Yes.
So, did you eventually give an item to Lee Cole?
Yes.
What did you give Lee Cole?
I gave him 2 to 3 boxes of ammunition.
So, this was ammunition from your house?
Yes.
And what kind of ammunition did you think it was?
We thought they were blanks. When I say we, it was leftover, presumed to be leftover from my husband's time in canine.
Okay, so the reason that you had all these blanks is because you both used to be canine officers?
My husband, yes.
Okay. Oh, I guess, so how did you get the ammunition to Lee Cole?
I brought them to work and just gave them to him there.
Did you ever look at the boxes?
Only to put them in the bag.
Did you ever open them?
No.
When you gave him this ammunition, was it inside of the department? Was it outside?
If I remember correctly, we were outside. I think he pulled up in his car out back, and I walked out to his vehicle and talked to him out there.
And what did you tell him when you gave him the boxes?
Exactly what we just talked about, that we were cleaning out stuff, and my husband was pretty sure they were left over from several years ago in canine. So I warned him that I thought they were kind of old, but he should just get them checked out, and then he could use them for training.
And when you gave him this ammunition, did you say to him, as the supervisor, you are to use these in all future demonstrations?
No.
Did you tell him he had to use them at all the time?
No.
When did you learn about the shooting here in Knowlton?
It was that night, maybe, I don't know, it was probably about a half hour, 45 minutes after it happened.
Did somebody contact you?
Yes.
Overall. Somebody contacted you? Do you know who it was?
Yes, it was Gloria Sapanic.
Did you go back to the department?
Yes.
Okay, and in your role with community services, did you immediately get involved in the media aspect of it?
Yes.
Either that day or the next day, did Tom Lewis tell you he wanted to speak to the media?
I don't recall when it was. We
Did he
just,
speak to the media?
yes.
On more than one occasion?
Yes.
And were you present with him when he addressed the media?
Yes.
Madam, the state, I believe, has had an objection to one interview.
You mean? State's Exhibit 132 will be admitted into evidence for stipulation.
Did you previously review this video?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I publish?
You may, let me know. Are you okay if we turn down the lights now, or do you need a minute?
Your Honor?
You go ahead and turn the light.
pages prior to
Any objections? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are about to view a video recording. The court instructs you that the recording has been edited to eliminate irrelevant portions that would not add to your understanding of the case. The fact that the recording has been edited should not concern you in any way and must not impact the way you view and consider this evidence. You may proceed.
Yes, I believe that was the same evening.
what would
Actually, yes, it would have been the next day, I believe.
and is this just a smaller portion of a larger conference or statement from the chief?
It was probably about a page and a half statement.
So, was reading off of something?
Yes.
Chief of Police, I accept full responsibility for the actions of my department, my officers, and the bottom lines are 100% accountable. As your Chief of Police, I accept full responsibility for the actions of my department, my officers, and the bottom lines are 100% accountable. As your Chief of Police, I accept full...
Do you remember what other things were discussed during that press conference?
To the best of my recollection, I think that one focused on what facts we knew at the time that could be released.
Some things about the actual academy?
Yes, and just I think he talked about what was going to happen moving forward as far as having FDLE conduct an investigation.
Was Lee Cole identified at this time?
I don't recall.
Cross-examination.
So this press conference that you came in for, you were the public information officer, right?
Yes.
You wrote this, correct?
Myself and another person was helping me.
And so you wrote this press conference that Tom Lewis was going to go out as the chief of the agency to give to the public as far as a statement about what had happened in the traffic event, correct?
Yes.
So when you wrote the words on the statement, as your chief of police, I accept full responsibility for the actions of my department and my officers. Tell him that you had given Lee Cole 3 boxes of bullets that you thought were blanks but had not reviewed?
No, I didn't even know about that really happening, like it being correlated to this.
Well, you knew Lee Cole was the shooter, correct?
Yes.
And you knew that you had told Lee Cole that he could use these blanks for whatever he was doing, correct?
That would be incorrect. The terminology I used was for his training.
You told him to use it for his training. Did you distinguish or clarify to him that it could be used for training, but they couldn't be used for public demonstrations or scenarios? Did you go that far?
I had no knowledge he was using that gun for public demonstrations,
Well,
like for this.
What was the happy hour?
It was the what?
What's the happy hour?
It was a canine demo.
Right, and it was for the what? The public, right? Yes?
Yes.
So you were full aware that he's using that gun for public demonstration?
Yes.
Okay, so, that you were fully aware that he's using that gun for public demonstration because you were at the happy hour, correct?
Yes.
Tell the jury what the happy hour was.
It was a canine demonstration.
Where?
He showed, I'm sorry?
Where was it?
It was in the backyard of the Four Points, Sheridan.
This hotel right over here, right?
Yes.
And it was something where people could bring their dogs out, correct?
Yes.
And Lee Cole used that gun with blanks in it, correct?
Yes.
And he fired that gun in the presence or near the people watching it, sitting over there in the Four Points kind of back area, right?
Yes.
So, you knew that he was the shooter, and you knew that he used this gun, and you knew that there were blanks involved, right?
Yes.
And at no time, oh, by the way, you moved when, July 4th or so?
It was just prior to that, I believe.
So this is about a little bit over a month from this event, correct?
Yes.
Did you raise the Chief Lewis at any point before you started writing for something for him to say that, hey, listen, you know, I gave him some ammunition that he didn't get through the department. Did you raise that to him?
No, it never went through my mind at the time.
The next line that you wrote there for him, I am 100% accountable. Same question to that. When you wrote that, had you told him yet what your involvement in this case was?
No.
And you would agree with me that this document you wrote was at a time that Chief Lewis wasn't charged with a crime, correct?
Correct.
And that it wasn't written as some type of confession to a crime, correct?
Correct.
It was written as basically, I'm the chief, I will come out here and address this, and the agency's accountable as, then we're going to figure out what happened here, correct?
Yes, it was written under the advisement of the other person that I had assisting us.
Well, my question to you was, it was written, if the messaging that you were trying to do publicly was to let the community know that the agency's going to be accountable, we're going to find out what happened, and that's when you start going into, we put out PLE on this, correct?
Right.
You've been with the agency at the time of this incident for 10 years, correct?
Yes.
And you worked your way up into the command ranks as a lieutenant, correct?
Yes.
And you've been over the canine division before this incident, correct?
Yes.
You were trained and you were certified with the canine dog?
Yes.
And part of your certification with the canine dog is you have to use a gun with blanks, right?
Yes.
And when you're trained to use a gun with blanks and canine, you're trained how to safely use the gun with blanks, correct?
Yes.
Part of the safety of the use of the gun with blanks is you don't aim it at anybody, right?
That is correct.
And if you don't aim it at your dog,
Correct.
and you aim it downward to make the sound, correct?
Right down at your leg. Well, yeah, like straight down at the ground.
Not your foot or something.
No.
Over, right? Okay.
Yes.
And when you're doing that, by the way, when you're aiming it down the ground or you're aiming it this way here, you're usually not, when you fire a blank, an actual blank, you're not moving the earth. Like you're not causing the earth to come flying out of the ground and move 6 inches or 12 inches, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The blank doesn't have a projectile bullet like a regular one, right?
Right.
And the idea of a blank is that it's basically supposed to make a noise. Agreed?
Yes.
It's not intended to shoot people, right? It can be dangerous if you put it as a contact and pull it, right?
Objection, counsel testifying. Sustained.
Are you familiar with you familiar with the ways a blank gun can be dangerous if used closely?
Not particularly, I mean, no.
Okay.
I guess.
To your knowledge, then, were you ever trained that a blank gun, if pushed against your body, can cause death or serious bodily injury?
Objection, I cannot be testified.
Overruled.
I know there's a flash, so I would be guessing. I don't.
Well, so you don't know then, you didn't know when you were trained on using a blank as a canine officer, if it was dangerous to put a blank gun against somebody because it could cause death or serious bodily injury.
I wasn't trained to use blanks.
Okay. So, well, how did you use blanks as a canine officer?
I wasn't a decoy. The decoy is the one that fires the gun.
Did you have to certify your dog?
Yes.
Okay.
That doesn't involve me shooting a gun.
Did you ever shoot a blank gun on your dog?
No.
So, were you ever present at the training for the certification where you were being certified?
Yes.
Did you see the proper way in which a blank gun was used as you testified before, down?
Yes.
So your knowledge then of how a blank gun is even used was limited even though you were a canine officer, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, knowing that you aren't completely familiar with the dangers of a blank, I would take it then that if you were going to give an officer in your agency any ammunition, it would be important for you to understand what you're giving them, correct?
Yes.
So in the course of doing that, when you found, where did you find these boxes, by the way?
They were in we had bags that we moved from a cabinet. All of our ammo was stored in the same place.
Okay. Let me ask you first. You knew legal, correct?
Yes.
And you actually had been his field training officer, correct?
Yes.
Tell the jury what a field training officer is.
It's an officer as soon as he's hired. There's several of us that go through a succession, and we train him about the agency's policies and procedures, how to be a police officer, maybe in the state of Florida if they're from another state or they're new, just different statutes, and we just go over the process of training them to be out on their own.
And so one of the policies and procedures of field training officer that you would train anybody new coming through you, and you would be you're known as the FTO, field
Yes.
training officer, that's the acronym. As the FTO for legal, one of the things you would talk to them about is proper firearm use, correct?
They get firearms training from the firearms instructor,
Okay.
so that's not really under the purview that I had as far as the field training officer.
Well, you're trained every year and certified every year.
Yes.
in firearm safety, correct?
Yes.
And if you're out with somebody under your supervision as an FTO who's using improper firearm safety, you're able to correct that and train them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And one of the things that you're trained about is don't ever point a gun at somebody unless you intend to shoot them with it, right?
Yes.
And the other thing that you're trained about is always treat every gun as if it's loaded, right?
Yes.
And actually, within the Punta Gorda Police Department, the department itself, whether it was under Chief Punmell or Chief Lewis, makes you sign a document called Cardinal Rules of Firearm Safety by the Punta Gorda Police Department, right?
Yes.
And there's 4 little boxes that you get to put your initials on, correct?
Yes.
And 2 of those boxes are the don't point and treat it as loaded, correct?
Yes.
And then there's a thing at the bottom you sign saying, I've read all the other rules about this, correct?
Yes.
There's also a policy of the department that deals with the fact that the agency will either issue ammo or approve ammo, correct?
Yes.
So were those things in the field training office as an FTO that if they came up as a question, you could have answered for legal?
Yes.
After you were a field training officer, then you took over as a supervisor because K-9 came under you, correct?
Yes.
And as a K-9 officer, Lee Cole was sent to the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office by Chief Lewis to receive his further K-9 training from certified officers, correct?
Yes.
And would you agree with me that the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office, that's the agency that your husband worked at and you work at now,
Yes.
has a much larger K-9 division?
Yes.
And they have certified training officers there to train on K-9, correct?
Yes.
And so it became a regular routine for Lee Cole, under your supervision, that you knew he would be out, what, twice a month, at least, getting training in Charlotte County, right?
Objection, counsel testifying.
Overruled.
Yes.
So, Now, your role was over community services, and you briefly described that before for the jury. You would agree with me that in the community services role, you understood that the job description you had put you at the forefront of setting up things that involve the public, correct?
Yes.
Now, did you believe at any point during this that when you set up things involving the public and you were getting people to serve certain roles or making sure enough personnel was there, that you did not have to think about issues of safety? Did you feel that way?
I would have thought that, but I wasn't recreating what was already done. We already had a set parameter for what was to happen.
Okay, and that kind of is like we're going to have a presentation, and we're going to have a tour, and we're going to have a static, and we're going to have a demo, and we're going to have questions, right?
Right.
So you weren't recreating the organizational structure of it, correct?
Right.
But you were responsible for making sure the proper personnel was there, right?
Yes.
And within the proper personnel, you were responsible for making sure that that personnel included people that could conduct appropriate safety issues, correct?
I was never told to specifically have a safety officer there.
Okay, well, whether you were told to have a safety officer there or not, you understood that in any public display involving your agency, that you're dealing with the public, that the event has to be safe.
Yes.
Okay. And you understand to make it safe will depend on the people that you assign to it, correct?
Yes.
And you understand that the community event you were dealing with here dealt with more than 2 people coming through and taking a tour through the police department.
Correct.
You knew this could be up to 50 people, right?
Yes.
And so with that in mind, you then are now figuring out what people do I want there for these events, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so when it came to the shoot, don't shoot part, you put 4 people assigned to that, correct?
Yes.
Now, Lee Cole and Shane Chanikowski, you put them in there because you knew they were going to be role players, right?
Yes.
And you fully expected that when you put them in there as role players, that any safety issues that dealt with them, they would do, right?
Yes.
Well, you didn't, I mean, if they're going to deal with a gun or anything, you expect them to use appropriate safety measures, proper firearm usage, etc., right?
Yes.
Okay. You put in Chief Lewis because you know that Chief Lewis, during these things, narrates, correct?
I didn't know what his role was.
Well, you've seen it before where he narrates, correct?
I had not seen one before.
I thought you said you'd seen one before this.
I wasn't outside while they were doing it. I was facilitating the entire event. During the Leadership Charlotte one, the setup was slightly different.
The itinerary you set up starts with the chief speaking, correct?
Yes.
The tour that you have starts with, has the chief taking a group of people around, correct?
Yes.
The static has the chief out there with the participants going among the statics, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you know that while the chief's doing that, any other scenario has to be set up at some point, correct?
Any other?
Any other thing while he's speaking has to be set up. He can't be doing both.
Correct.
Okay. So you're putting personnel out there that can set these things up while he's speaking, obviously, right?
I didn't think about the setup, I guess, because they've done it before.
Well, besides Chief Lewis, then you put Lieutenant Saltzman, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Now, you mentioned earlier that Chief Lewis and Jeff Woodard had done them before, and that's in reference to one you were aware of, right?
Correct.
And Lieutenant Saltzman was the training officer, correct?
Yes.
And the training officer, you know, is responsible for the armory, training, to do safety checks, all those things, correct?
Yes.
And you didn't have him out there just by, let me just throw another person for the sake of it. You had him out there for a reason, correct?
It was just a matter of which command staff weren't doing the presentation beforehand.
So, command staff's going to do a presentation during it, and then there's going to be a training officer that's helping with setup and doing safety checks, correct?
I don't know what his specified roles were for it.
Well, let me ask you this. When you're setting this up, are you telling me now that you had no idea when you selected Lieutenant Saltzman in charge of training to do the shoot, don't shoot scenario, that you didn't have any expectation that he or anybody else was going to do safety checks?
No, I did have that expectation.
Okay.
Sure.
So there's an expectation when you create this that safety checks are going to be done.
Yes.
Okay. So you're not just making a list of, well, you throw some names out, but I'm not really expecting anybody to do anything as far as safety checks.
No, historically, my understanding was the core people in the command staff always attended and took the different roles,
Okay.
like for what we needed.
So you made sure there were enough people to do those roles, right?
Yes.
And you would understand, I take it logically, if Chief Lewis is taking the role of speaking to the crowd or speaking on the presentation, that the safety checks have to be done, obviously, before the crowd steps out to the scenario, right?
Well, the way we worked, I don't know that everyone was in place before that happened. Like, there's a kind of a break where people are walking to each thing. So I don't,
Well,
I'm just not familiar, I don't know when those things were set up to take place.
Well, let's talk about how you set it up. You set up Chief Lewis to do everything, basically, right? There wasn't one event that he wasn't doing, correct?
That was his role as chief, was to be there.
Right, because he's the face of the organization, right?
Right.
Meet the chief, shake his hand, let him talk to you type of thing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what my question to you is this. If he's doing all of the speaking engagements, I take it you understood as lieutenant in charge of community services, that while these other events are going to be presented, somebody has to set them up, whether it's a static or whether it's a shoot, don't shoot, putting the cars in place, getting the gear, checking the semi-munitions gun. That's going to have to be done during that event at some point, correct?
Correct.
All right. You know that if Chief Lewis is doing all of the speaking between the presentation and the tour and the static, that he's not going to be the person that's necessarily doing that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so that's why you put enough personnel to cover those things, so there'd be enough people to take care of those jobs, right?
Yes.
You obviously did not believe when you assigned Lee Cole that he would be giving the opening presentation. You didn't assign him to that, you didn't list his name to that, correct?
No.
You didn't expect him to be giving a tour or a static, you expected him to do shoot, don't shoot, correct?
Yes.
And that's because in his role of doing demonstrations, you had seen him do that.
Seen him do the,
Public demonstrations of any type,
I've seen him do a canine demonstration, yes.
where he would use a gun that fired a gun.
Yes.
And the public demonstration that you saw, by the way, that you were present at, was Chief Lewis there?
No.
Okay. The one that you saw him do, did you see him use the blank gun?
No.
You weren't watching it?
No, well, I had my children with me. I wasn't there on duty.
Right. So you were there, you didn't have an official role, but were you watching the demonstration?
Yes.
Okay. And you felt comfortable enough in a demonstration, in fact, you had your children there, and you guys were in a position where you could see it and watch it, right?
Right.
And this demonstration, actually, I think they released the dog eventually, and it grabs the guy in a bite suit or something, right?
Yes.
Okay. Lee Cole discharged his blank gun in that demonstration, right?
I think it was actually, they did like a traffic stop thing, and I think it was actually the other officer that fired the blank gun.
Okay, but you saw the discharge of it.
I heard it,
Heard the
yes.
noise.
Yeah.
And in that case there, that was a silver type gun?
I didn't see the gun.
Okay. Do you know it was Lee Cole's gun?
Quite frankly, no.
Did you later learn it was his gun?
I thought it was his, or at least, obviously, it was a canine gun.
You understand that FDLE requires canine officers to use a gun capable of firing blanks?
Yes.
Right? And when K-9 began reporting to you, Lee Cole already had whatever gun he was using, right?
Yes, I can.
Did you do any type of inspection on his gun as his supervisor when you received it?
No.
When did you take over K-9?
In October.
Of 2015?
Yes.
You would agree with me that any secondary weapon that somebody wants to use at the Punta Gorda Police Department has to go through a particular vetting process where you have to, I guess, do an application to get approval to carry the gun, and you have to qualify on it.
Yes.
Did you do any type of inquiry at any point when he was under you as far as whether the weapons he had been approved to do that?
No, at the time, I think when I did his first and probably only line inspection that I did, he had a secondary gun, but it was not that revolver. It was an actual secondary weapon that he had.
So you knew he had another weapon that was in line inspection, but you knew it wasn't the weapon that he was using for K-9 demonstration?
Right, up until that point, I didn't know he had a weapon for that. I didn't know he had a K-9 gun. Or like I didn't know he had that gun for training.
Eventually, you learned he had a K-9 gun for, what you thought was a K-9 gun for training that you assumed he was using for demonstrations?
On the night of August, yeah, on August 9th.
You didn't know before that?
No.
Did you know he'd done K-9 demonstrations before besides Yapping House?
Yes.
Did you know he did them at a middle school for the GREAT program or the drug program or a gang program?
I knew he did a lot of them, yes.
Okay. And you knew that he was using, again, blanks for the effect of the demonstration?
No.
You didn't know that?
No.
Do they have to file something called K-9 training reports?
Yes, they do.
Okay. K-9 training reports are what?
It documents the training that they did for the day.
And so if they go to a public event and use a gun that fires blanks, they have to document that in a K-9 training report, right?
Yes.
Okay. And did you, as a supervisor, ever review those reports?
No.
Were you ever made aware of any of those reports?
No.
So your testimony is that you knew he was doing demonstrations, but you didn't know in his demonstrations that he was firing blanks. Is that right?
No, because, well, in my history, with my experience with K-9, and that must have obviously changed, we didn't fire a blank gun for every K-9 demonstration.
Okay, well, I'm not asking for every demonstration, I'm just asking, were you aware that you used a K-9, used a gun that fired blanks at any K-9 demonstration prior to August 9, 2016?
The one that I saw him fire the gun at Yappy Hour, yes.
So you did see him fire the gun at Yappy Hour?
Yes.
Can I push the clerk?
You may.
Second, I'm going to show you what's been marked, that's Exhibit A. Tell me, you recognize that document?
Yes.
You recognize your signature on that document?
Yes.
As a K-9 officer under your supervision, you would obtain blanks for lethal use, correct?
Yes.
And in February of 2016, you obtained blanks for lethal to use, is that correct?
Yes.
And can you tell me what brand of blanks you obtained from them?
Special Super X blank rounds.
By Winchester?
It doesn't say on here, so I don't know. I'm just reading what's on
Remember the
here.
brand that you would use?
I don't.
Do you remember how many boxes you obtained from him in February of 2016?
Yes, the order form says 3.
And do you remember the count per box?
It's 50 rounds.
You obtained 150 blank rounds as of February 2016, correct?
Yes.
You may.
you would agree with me, unlike regular ammunition used in the training range or the gun range or even in service, the use of blank by canine either for training or for demonstration was not voluminous, like you wouldn't go through boxes every month or something like that, correct?
It would depend on the training they were doing.
You agree with me that you can purchase blank boxes and still have stuff left over 6, 8, 10, 12 months later as far as the usage?
I don't know. It'd be depending on the circumstances, what they're doing.
You were aware when you purchased those for lethal that they were going to be department-approved blanks that you could use, correct?
Yes.
When you did that, you were a supervisor, right?
Yes.
And that requisition, then you would have to go to Chief Lewis and tell him or show him, hey, I need to get this for Lee Cole to use as blanks, correct?
Yes.
And so the chief would have to approve that also, or to be bought, right?
Yes.
And you place him on notice, Lee Cole's asked for this, I'm now giving you the requisition form, need you to approve it, correct?
Yes.
Remember the place called Glacier Park in Punta Gorda?
Yes.
What is that?
A park in Punta Gorda.
Did you see Lee Cole use that same gun in a demonstration at Glacier Park in Punta Gorda?
I don't recall him doing that or being there.
Was that the same event as the Yappy Hour?
No, the Yappy Hour was at like the park that's in front of 4 Points. So
Do you remember an event at Lacey Park?
no, I mean we had several, but I don't know.
You know, first of all,
You may.
show you your August 12, 2016, that hearing at 2:39 p.m. Read.
Start with it highlighted? Or, I'm sorry. Okay. Yes, he fired the shot. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yes, but then yes, but I think I just if you read further down, I just misidentified the park. Okay.
So, did you reference an event with FDLE at Lacey Park?
Yes.
Did you mean that was the one at the 4 Points Hotel?
Yes.
That's the same event?
Yes.
And in that event, then, that's when you attended and you saw him there with that different session?
Yes.
Now, okay, let's talk about then some more detail of these boxes that you did. When you got the boxes, did you notice the boxes all were the same or different when you found them in your house?
They were different.
Did you read any of the boxes?
No.
Why not?
Because I was just going with what my husband told me he thought they were.
Did you know if your husband had read the box?
I just have what he told me, so I don't.
He told you they're blanks.
Yes, he said he thought they were blanks.
He thought they were blanks. Was there anything on the boxes obstructing you from actually taking a second to look down and read the box?
No.
Do you know what the word grain means in relation to a bullet?
No, I know it's a description, but.
The weight of a bullet, do you know that?
No.
Do you know, let me ask you this, were all the boxes marked with the word blanks?
I don't know.
Well, how did you confirm that, because I think they're blanks, tell me what steps at all, if any, you took to confirm, okay, before I hand them to an officer or an agency, these are actually blanks?
One of the boxes looked exactly like the boxes that I recalled from when I was in K-9.
Okay, and what was it about that box that looked the same?
It was the same, like, square shape, and I think it was Winchester. It was marked, like, it looked the same.
Okay. Did it say blanks on it?
That one did, yes.
Okay, so you read blanks on one. Now, did you go look at the other two?
No.
Did the other two look like the one that you knew to be blanks?
No, they were different.
Have you ever seen that type of box before?
Nope.
FDLE interviewed you about this on August 12th of 2016, correct?
Yes.
And at that time, you told them you couldn't recall the name of the ammo, correct?
Right.
And you believed you just gave them one box, is that correct?
Yes, at the time.
You advised them that you yourself never used the ammo that you gave them, correct?
Yes.
You advised the ammo you gave them was silver, is that correct?
I think so, yes.
Now, is there a reason that you told FDLE at that time you only gave one box when you agreed here that you gave them 3 boxes that were different?
Yes. Quite frankly, it was just a lot. This was 2 days after the incident, and it was a lot to process. So when we were trying to then I was trying to recall back to what had happened, I just couldn't remember.
When you were interviewed by FDLE, did you have any reason to think that Lee Cole had fired some kind of live round out of the gun and used it for blanks?
Before I was interviewed by them, or?
Right. Before they commenced this interview, did you have any information to believe that he fired some kind of round out of his gun that he normally used for blanks?
Yes, it was what we were assuming, I think, just by people talking.
Did you go outside and see the cars at all?
No.
Did you learn at all whether the cars had bullet holes or marks?
No.
So going into the interview, you had knowledge that something may have come out of his gun that shouldn't have been in his gun. Agreed?
Yes.
You originally told FDLE that the box that you gave him you knew to be old, correct?
Yes.
And why did you know that? How did you know that?
Well, they looked old, and the ammo boxes looked old.
Well, you originally told him one box, so you're saying the one box looked old?
But then I think we talked about it being 2.
Okay, so you
So-
thought more, maybe thought it was 2 boxes.
Yeah.
So FDLE comes back out and he interviews you on August 15th, 2016, correct?
I think so. I think we did talk again.
And you advised them at that time, quote, "I'm so positive that the box that you give them had blanks on the box," correct?
Yes.
Did you tell them that there were blanks on both boxes you gave them, since you were now discussing 2 boxes?
I don't remember.
You then recalled on the 15th, when they asked you about how to get to them, now you recalled that you actually put them in a Publix bag, correct?
Yes.
And the fact that you remember putting them in a Publix bag is when you said, well, wait a minute, it must have been more than one, because when I used the bag, it would have been more than one box, correct?
Yes.
And you advised that you gave him those that you in the back lot of Punta Gorda Police Department, right?
Yes.
once you gave him those things in July, did you take any steps or efforts to go to Lee Cole and say to him, hey, listen, what I gave you, did you get those approved through the agency, or have you tested them and had somebody look at them for us?
No.
Why not?
I didn't think I needed to, I guess.
You understood the Punta Gorda Police Department had a policy that Lee Cole could not use any type of ammunition unless it was either given to him by the agency or approved by the agency, correct?
Right.
And you knew that rule also, correct?
Yes.
And I take it you were not in the position, and you told him, look, we found these in the garage and they're in a Publix bag. You weren't representing to him that you're here as part of the agency giving him approved ammunition.
Correct.
Because for you to approve that ammunition would require you to go through the same steps as anybody else. You'd have to bring it to somebody in the armor or a firearms trainer or somebody in authority to approve it, right?
Yes.
Did you have any occasion to go between July 4th and when you gave him and before the incident where he used these bullets to injure Miss Knowlton, to go and ask him to see the boxes or ask him where are they stored right now?
No.
What was your maiden name?
Mendel.
Were you advised in the process of this that there had been fingerprinting analysis done on these boxes?
Yes.
And were you advised that your fingerprint came back on the blazer box?
Yes.
The fingerprint came back to the name Katie Mendel, which was identified to you, correct?
Yes.
Originally when you spoke to FDLE, you remember when you originally spoke to them that you told them that you did not believe or recall that you had acquired blanks for lethal?
When they first asked me, yes.
Okay. So when FDLE came back, they brought with them a requisition form that had your signature on it and basically put it in front of you and said, is this your signature on this requisition form, correct?
Yes.
And that's when you told them, yes, I obtained blanks for him in February of 2016.
Yes.
There is no question in your mind then, as you sit here today, that the wad cutters that were found in his vehicle that he used to fire in this event came from you, correct?
No.
No what? Am I correct?
Oh, yes.
Did you ever file with the Punta Gorda Police Department any type of report, or document, or memo that you had provided lethal with ammunition outside of the department?
No.
Did you ever go advise anybody in the department throughout that whole time that you had done that?
No.
When this incident happened, we know you didn't raise it that night to anybody, correct?
Right.
And you didn't raise it before you had Chief Lewis do the press conference, correct?
Right.
Did you raise it at any point before your FDLE interview?
No, until the FDLE agents asked me about it, I hadn't even thought about it.
Fair to say that you certainly never advised Chief Lewis that you had provided lethal with vodka, correct?
Yes, correct.
Have a moment now.
You may.
Did Tom Lewis reprimand or discipline you after he found out where the ammunition came from?
You may.
Reprimanded or disciplined when Tom Lewis found out about the wad murders?
No.
Do you recognize this organizational chart?
Yes.
Okay, and at this time, this is you here, correct?
Yes.
Okay, where was Tom Lewis before he became chief?
He was the operations commander.
He's over here.
Yes.
I know we previously discussed, when you were the community services supervisor, you had Lee Cole under you. You had K9, right?
Yes.
Okay, and that's because when Tom Lewis became the chief, he sent K9 from operations over to you, correct? Because you were a K9 officer?
Yes.
And so prior to that, K9 was always under operations?
Yes.
Okay, and again, before you, or when before Chief Lewis became Chief Lewis, he was the head of what?
Operations.
So does that mean he was in charge and supervised Lee Cole prior to you?
Yes.
Okay, and he came to you already having that revolver, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did Tom Lewis personally invite the Chamber of Commerce to come that night?
I believe so.
And the statement that you prepared along with somebody else, did Tom Lewis have an opportunity to review it before he got on television to read it?
Yes.
So does he have to approve it?
Yes, it was for him.
Pretty quick.
So, you understood that FDLE at the point this incident happened took everything over, correct?
Yes.
Your agency couldn't investigate you, it couldn't investigate any other witness, they couldn't even investigate Nicole because it had all been given.
Objection to counsel testifying.
It had all been given to FDLE to do that function, correct?
Yes.
That was to keep the integrity of the investigation because you don't want your own agency investigating itself, correct?
Yes, that was my understanding.
Right. So Tom Lewis, even if he wanted to do something as far as investigate you, couldn't do it by law because it had gone over to FDLE.
Objection to counsel testifying. Sustained.
Tom Lewis could not sanction you.
Objection, counsel testifying. Overruled.
Tom Lewis could not sanction you because you're covered under something called the Police Officer's Bill of Rights, correct?
Objection. Someone objection? Or what would...
I don't know if it prevents him from sanctioning me.
Well, you understand that you can't be sanctioned unless an internal affairs investigation is started, correct?
Yes.
Okay. An internal affairs investigation requires the department to investigate an incident, correct?
Yes.
And the department's hands are tied for investigating this incident because the whole thing was given to FDLE, correct?
That was my understanding.
So again, if they can't investigate you yet because FDLE is doing it, he doesn't have the power to do anything to you yet, does he?
The way you're describing it, no. I don't think so.
You may step down.
Okay.
Council want to approach? All right, ladies and gentlemen, it looks as though the next witness will put us quite a few bit past 5 o'clock. And again, I promised you to keep banker's hours, so you're going to get a little early break this evening. I want you back at the same time, just a little bit before 9, so we can start the testimony right at 9 o'clock. Again, broken record, please do not discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anybody else. If anyone approaches you, please advise them you're on the jury and ask them to stop. Please do not do any of your own investigation or research. Do not look up anything in any media context, television, internet, blog, website, chat, Snapchat, whatever it is that I haven't named, please do not look up the case. And have a good evening. We'll see you back tomorrow. Okay, is there anything else that we need to address for this evening? All right, so we are in recess. I'll have council back here, same thing, a little bit before 9.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County COPWATCH, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheeple up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Sheriff County COPWATCH with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers, just think if each one of you subscribers just gave a, let's say, actually, yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But, you know, do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, you know, at least I can do it. You know, 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea, too, that we have is, you know, if I got, you know, some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. You know, 47,000 of you so far right now. You know, $1 a day. I mean, $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head. Help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.